there is a sense of urgency on sleep apnea. We should use April 1st, 2025 as a planning factor for this claim because we all know the changes by now. 50% sleep apnea with a CPAP that is wearable, okay, or a treatment that is wearable is going to be dropped down to 0%. So having that intent to file, especially that it would be better if you just had the claim altogether so you don't have to deal with it. There's an urgency on sleep apnea secondary to mental health for that 50% rating. Jason, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So first, I want to clarify a little bit here for the folks. When Clay is saying April 1st, what he's saying is the current VA rating schedule that is in effect today, August 2024, is allowing a 50% rating for sleep apnea with a prescribed CPAP. That is proposed to change. The VA's already submitted all of their paperwork and all their schedule change stuff. And it is anticipated, they've kicked the can down the road, and it is anticipated that the final, quote unquote, date of this change, which is negative, which is a 0% rating for that same situation, is scheduled for April of 2025. Now, we really don't know when that's going to happen. It could happen sooner, which is why Clay said it'd be better if you just did your claim. So it could happen sooner, could happen later. They could kick it down the road some more, or it could happen in April. We really don't know, but we are keeping a sharp eye on it, and we will bring it to you on all three of our channels because it's that big of a deal. The idea here is if you start to, number one, you should file your, put in an intent to file unless you're already ready to file a claim tomorrow. If you're not ready to file a claim tomorrow and you still have a little bit more to do, put in your intent to file now because you just don't know. Don't play around with it. Even though if history repeats itself, Clay, we got a 60-day-ish notice on the digestive system change. So the VA did warn us loosely. They put out a little public notice on their website, which you have to go find.
We warned us.
Yeah. So, but rest assured, either Clay will see it or I will see it. Then each of us will see it. Then we'll all be sharing it. So no matter what, it will get out to you. Hopefully that's what happens again, right? That we get that 60-day notice, but don't bank on it because we just don't know, right? We don't know what's going to happen. A change in the seasons, change of everything. I mean, it's election year. There's a lot of moving pieces. Their budget sucks. I mean, everything's horrible. So take it upon yourself to do the right things. Get that intent to file in. Now, with your sleep apnea, if you think you have sleep apnea, if you snore, if you've ever been told you snore, go get a sleep study, right? I mean, that's really it. Don't guess that you don't have it. The one thing that I found, Clay, is that veterans of all people are really good at self-segregating out of stuff. Like, no, I'm good. No, I'm fine. Nah, whatever. So if you've ever been told you snore or you think you snore or whatever, or even if you're not even sure, just ask for a frickin' sleep study and see if you can get one done just to make sure, because this is such a substantial claim. It's ridiculous. And when you're talking about secondary, so there's a couple different things. Well, I'm just going to focus on this. What we're talking about is secondary conditions that help get you to that 100% mark. How does this help, right? Well, sleep apnea can be secondary for a whole host of things. I'll throw out a few. I'll let Clay throw out some. There's, I guess, studies, whatever you want to call it. There's information out there that shows that sleep apnea can be secondary to conditions like sinusitis, rhinitis, asthma, lung conditions. Well, guess what? We're talking about all the veterans that have ever served overseas in the last 20 years with all the burn pit stuff. And really, quite frankly, there's an argument to be made for every veteran who served in any theater, anywhere, because there's always been burn pits back in however long ago. So It's just that it's not a presumptive condition for that initial thing. So you would have to work with your doctor and create a real claim, and it at least likely is not. And, you know, you have a picture of the burn pit, you know, in a black and white picture from 19 whatever. You know, that's evidence. I'm just saying that, you know, if you had to kick it to the board, they're gonna weigh on that and be like, you know what, yeah, you're there, you know, this is a burn pit, you know, you're like this, you know, whatever. Somebody took a picture of you. I guess we didn't really do selfies back when there was just cameras really too much, because you weren't quite sure where you were aiming. But so you gave the camera to somebody else. They took a picture of you by the burning pile of garbage. So those are some possibilities where sleep apnea could be that secondary condition. And I'm telling you, Clay, you know as well as I do that with the opening up of all the presumptive conditions for Gulf War era vets, with the burn pit specifically for those two things, sinusitis and rhinitis, those two alone, there's a lot of opportunity there for people to. Here's the thing. Anytime I see anything like this that says this is a common secondary, like sleep apnea, to this, or here's a presumptive condition, all that rings in my head is, you, veteran who served overseas in that time period, are more likely than everybody else in the world to get those things. Go get checked for them, because you're more apt to having it, and it's better to check and get things under control early than late, and so go do that. That's me. Back to you, Clay. Starting to get all worked up.
Yeah. So sleep apnea is a respiratory condition. So your other respiratory conditions, there's a word for it. It goes both ways, right? So sleep apnea secondary to rhinitis, rhinitis secondary to sleep apnea. It's a two-way road. You can go both ways.
You want to call it biconditional?
Biconditional, yes.
I don't know.
But it is a word though, medical term. Now, there are two other conditions for sleep apnea to be secondary to that are common. And mental health is actually not the most common. It's going to be respiratory conditions. I think that's obvious. It's a respiratory condition. The second most common is obesity, but obesity is not recognized as a service-connected condition that gets a compensable rating. However, the VA will recognize, and I'm just going to say it like this for a reason, that you're fat because of service. Now, that is way different than being fat because you diet, you don't diet, or you don't work out, you're just obese. And the reason I'm saying it that way is because I really want the viewer right now to understand, if you are overweight and you have respiratory conditions and you have mental health, but your obesity is from bad diet, the VA will more likely than not attribute your sleep apnea to obesity, because there's a causative link between sleep apnea and obesity, and there's a correlated link between sleep apnea and respiratory conditions and sleep apnea and mental health. Meaning, if you're obese, you have got to speak with your healthcare provider and talk about how your service led to weight gain. The example I gave earlier, the double surgeries on each knee at 30%, you're going to have a hard time doing anything, especially going to the gym. You're not squatting, you're not doing leg presses, you're not doing any of that, and that will lead to weight gain for sure. And so the intermediate step is solid, but I would never in a million years rely on a CMP examiner to make the intermediate step for me. It's got to be through your primary care. And then that also leads to mental health. The strongest sleep apnea claim, in my opinion, is one where a veteran already has diagnosis. They have a CPAP, mouth guard, whatever treatment you want to use. Your apnea episodes would rate a CPAP. That's the 50% criteria. That veteran who is obese and has anxiety, they attribute the weight gain as an intermediate step, and the anxiety side of the house, like PTSD, like how we said earlier about tinnitus, how you're sleeping, but your body's not resting, right? You're technically asleep, but inside your body's like this. That's going to obstruct your airway, hence obstructive sleep apnea. That is the strongest claim for secondary sleep apnea I can think of, is when you are overweight and you have another correlating factor like respiratory conditions
Right.
or mental health. There's one thing I did want to talk about, Jason, and then I'll kick it back
Okay.
to you. That also brings up those who are not obese, who have anxiety, PTSD, or other respiratory conditions, because now the VA can't use that against you. And it's a stronger, I'm trying to get my words right. Since obesity is not causing your sleep apnea, you have a stronger link to mental health or respiratory conditions. Someone who's 26 is in good shape should not have sleep apnea. And you have to build evidence for the C&P examiner to see that, because C&P examiners are not sleep apnea gods, right? They're not going to look at your evidence and really make that link.
Right.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of tap on the obesity one. Also, you can so as you're looking at obesity and then you're trying to figure out ways to not let the VA say, well, it's because you're obese, right? So hormonal disorders, right? If you have a thyroid condition that is causing you to gain weight, right, or not lose weight, we'll say, your body's not processing like it should due to your hormonal kind of imbalance, that would be another kind of avenue to look down. What's funny is I've told people, Clay, and I'll say it out here to everyone, is during the TAP presentations, right, is, look, you're still in. If it were me, I'd go get a blood test for everything. Yeah. I'd check my hormone levels. I would check my thyroid. I would check everything. Check for diabetes. Check for everything. At a minimum, you should Google search your own demographic and go most common, conditions or ailments, and get checked for all of that while you're in, because then it'll help out a lot in this type of a situation, right? So if somebody is overweight today, but they got diagnosed for a hormonal imbalance due to a thyroid condition while they were in, then the dots are easy to connect for the VA to rule in your favor. I did pull up here, Clay, some other diseases that could basically attribute toward causing sleep apnea, right? So it says sleep apnea can be caused or aggravated by other diseases and conditions such as Parkinson's, type 2 diabetes, heart problems, hormonal disorders, tinnitus, which you were talking about, and more. So again, this should not be something that you go, no. Have a conversation with your doctor, right? One, go get a sleep study if you think there's even the smallest chance that you have sleep apnea, right? Don't say, oh, I just snore. Go get checked, right? And then if that sleep study comes back with you do have sleep apnea, then you need to be having a conversation with your doctor about, hey, could any of these conditions that I have that are service connected be the cause of this sleep apnea? And then you can go from there. Back over to you, Clay.
Yeah. One thing that sparked to mind, you talked about thyroids, which is any condition that would lead to sleep apnea for sure, or obesity. And that also includes medications. There are tons of medications that will, not maybe, you will gain weight. And if that medication is, helps with a condition that is service connected, by the way, the medication needs to help your service connected disability. Gabapentin is a real big one. Tons of mental health medications will cause you to gain weight. Also erectile dysfunction, solid secondary SMCK there for like $132 a month. But yeah, when it comes to sleep apnea, and I brought it up and I don't want to go too deep into it because it is a bit nerdy, but there's causation and correlation. You don't have to prove causation, which is, 100% that came, X caused Y. However, if every road sign's pointing that way, it's probably linked that way. So the more correlating factors you have, hey, I have rhinitis, I have anxiety, I take medication, I have thyroid condition, I have hypertension, I have tinnitus, whatever it is going on. If all of those point to sleep apnea, that's a very strong argument than saying, hey, I think I have sleep apnea. It's like, well, hold on. Let's backtrack. Let's go talk to our doctor. Let's look at everything we have that could lead to sleep apnea. Because remember, the burden of proof is at least as likely as not. I would show my dumb t-shirt right now, but it's upstairs. At least as likely as not. And that also goes to say you're not going to find any nexus. You're not going to find any nexus where sleep apnea is more likely than not because of the correlated causation relationship. It's going to be at least as likely as not. And it's very difficult for whatever reason for CMP examiners to make that burden of proof. You know, I think a lot of CMP examiners are proven, you know, prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt that service connected, which is not the burden of proof required for the VA. It's just as least as likely as not. That's all I have on sleep apnea, Jason, unless you have anything else.
You know, I'm just going to point out that, you know, this is a big deal, and that's why we're talking about it. It's a lot of money, okay? And especially when you're talking about sleep apnea. And here's the thing. We're talking about moving from, let's say, a potential you're, you know, in the 60, 70, 80% range and moving to 100%. I mean, that could be $2,000 a month difference-ish, right? That $2,000 is $24,000 a year. Over 4 years is $100,000, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money. $100,000 in 4 years of additional money in your household, in your pocket, increasing that disposable income, being able to buy things, having that as a monetary benefit, adding real money into your pocket is life-changing. And the reason why we're harping so much on sleep apnea is because it is a 50% rating today. It's going to be a 0%. Yeah, we're guessing in April. It is hard. With the VA funny math, the closer you get to 100, well, 95, the closer you get to 95, the harder it is to get there. The value of each claim actually gets smaller the closer you get.